Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back in the second update Red Skies dev server. It's time to have a look at a new naval destroyer that is coming to the game for the USSR. This is the Pr.30-bis, the Bezuprechny, and it is going to be at 4.3 and also in rank 2. Obviously for the Soviets, when it comes to rank 2 and 3, it's pretty sparse compared to a lot of other nations. If you have a look at Britain, for example, they have 4 and 4 for the 2 and 3. And for the USSR, for a lot of the times, it was actually 2 and 2. Nowadays, a little bit better with the 3 and 3. And now it looks like the Germans need a little bit of help in that regard, with the Americans obviously already doing pretty well in rank 2 and 3 and also 4. So this edition kind of balances out the research for the Soviets compared to other nations, and hopefully we'll see some more additions to do that too. The Bezuprechny is a wonderful little machine which has access to 2 main caliber sets of guns. It has 2 dual mounted 130mm B-13s. If you're not used to these guns, they're actually on a few other vehicles such as the Tashkent and also the Project 7U which exists. But in 2 dual mountings means that they'll be pretty easy to control. The only issue is, of course, the arc on this back one, because it's so close to the wall here. The arc is going to be a little bit rough to use, but it should be alright. It also has a secondary caliber armament of 1 single set of dual mounted 85mm, which you can see here. This will be pretty good for dealing secondary damage to destroyers and other stuff like that. And then the third AA armament, or the main AA armament, is 7 37mm guns. So a lot of firepower and also a long distance AA gun as well. And they're spotted all over the machine, so you can see a few here and here, and then a few at the back as well. It means that no matter what angle the machine is going to be attacked from, there is going to be some kind of AA fire which is going to fire back, and that is very important. It also means if there are any small machines which try and sneak up on the 30-bis, the 37s will be able to deal with them too. It also has a bunch of torpedoes on the center of the vehicle. Being a post-World War II destroyer, this thing has access to a lot more modern stuff than a few of the other ones which we see in the tech tree itself. The torpedoes, though, are the 53-39s. So these are some of the worst torpedoes in game, in my opinion. Without the torpedo mode, they only have 4,000 meters worth of distance. So with the torpedo mode, they get 10 kilometers, which is okay, but it's still very low compared to a lot of their competition. And this thing also gets access to mines, which with the buff to mines, where they're actually lasting a hell of a lot longer in game, maybe it's actually worth giving these things a go now, even though it's 60 different mines, and at the same time, they are basically just an open ammo rack and placed all the way down the machine. So if one goes pop, they all go pop, which would be a bit of a problem. Still a little bit of a rough shot to take them. You also have access to depth charges and stuff like that, which is really good. The main reason is depth charges aren't that useful, but anything that can add modifications to a machine to make the modifications individually cheaper is good. The reason for this is because then you can get the useful modifications for cheaper. This is a thing that we see a lot with light vehicles and stuff like that, when they get like airstrike and improved viewing or improved scouting and stuff. It just means that you have a setup where it's just easier to get certain modifications because they're cheaper, so it's easier to play the vehicles nearer their full potential. So now, because of stuff like bomb mortar, because of mines, that now makes stuff like pumps and maintenance cheaper and therefore more useful. The 130mm get access to 3 shells. You get a standard HE shell, which would be very good against destroyers and anything with a low base of armor. Then you get an SAP-CBC shell, which actually pens quite a lot, 179, 144, 62 across the board. This will be great against light cruisers, which at the higher echelons is something you will face if you get up-tiered, and then the HEVT as well, which will generally be pretty good against lightly armored targets, including planes as well. So a good selection of rounds for the 130mm. I really like the damage that the 130s do for the USSR destroyers. The only issue I have is the reload is not the best, but it's not terrible, it's okay. The 85s get access to HE, they also get access to APHE BC, and then also HETF. So you have across the board everything you need. You have AA armaments, and then you have the naval destruction armament as well, so that's completely fine. The only issue with a machine like this is even though it has 4 130s, there are stuff at this BR which have either the same amounts of guns or more guns, which have a much higher fire rate. So you've really got to make those shots count with stuff like the Bezuprechny. When it comes to the armor on this machine, it has 8mm on the turrets themselves, it has 10mm around the bridge, and also 10mm around the 37s. Not a ton to write home about. 8mm also on the 85mm. It has a hull of 16mm of armor, and the superstructure is 4, so you're not really going to be stopping too much stuff there. The crew of 286 though is quite nice. Just means that you'll be a little bit more survivable because of that. It's very standard to have a crew that size for a destroyer. And also you can see these fuel tanks. These fuel tanks will cause a lot of fires when they get hit, but at the same time what they'll also do is they'll shield your engines, which are sat at a really interesting angle on this machine actually. They're kind of lopsided right now. I wonder if they're supposed to be like that. That does seem a bit odd. But anyway, it means that the vehicles themselves are actually the engines themselves and the transmissions will have a little bit of extra protection because the HE shells fired will sometimes get stuck on the fuel tanks. Also has the ammo elevators and magazines and all of that good stuff with no protection for them, so they'll probably explode quite easily. Has an interesting fuel tank at the back here too, and obviously the exposed ammo at the front as well. Remember that ammo racks now will do less damage for machines, so you'll probably see more explosions but a lot less damage overall, which is completely fine. Something that is meta changing, so we'll have to see how that goes. So something like the Bezuprechny, it is really one of those vehicles which has access to all the tools to do well, but at the same time it is not going to be the simplest vehicle to use. With the way that the 130s are with the Soviets, they don't make it simple to just be, you know, really good at doing a ton of damage constantly and annihilate anything that you see. Instead, you have to put your shots, you have to be able to place your shots pretty well, since you don't have access to a ton of you don't have access to a ridiculous reload like stuff such as the 127s for the Germans are, and the amount of guns that you get on them, and also with the 4.3 British destroyers and also the American 5.0s in the form of stuff like the Porter. So what you end up having to do is you have to really know where to fire your shots. And generally one thing I do with stuff like this, which you can't really do because of the addition of the shell animation thing, which hopefully you'll be able to turn off, is what I would do is I would range shot and I would do something like this, and then I would hold down the button so it would continue fire. But the problem with doing that is it doesn't allow you to do that anymore. So hopefully they fix that. But pretty much it means that you can pop a shot here, pop a shot here, pop a shot here, and pop a shot here. So instead of actually doing a ton of damage to one central area, you can now do a little bit of damage to different areas, even though you have a lot less guns. This just means you can spread out your damage more, and you can put those 130s to use. Because if you don't do stuff like this by placing specific shells at the enemy and hitting different parts of the destroyer or the cruisers, whatever you're facing, the fact is you'll just get out DPM'd by every other type of destroyer from the majority of nations, or then you'll just get torpedoed. So it's just one of those little techniques you can do to try and keep up your DPM. Well, not keep up your DPM, but try and use your DPM as much as you can efficiently to take out anything that you face. Obviously against smaller machines, you know, the 130s are incredibly effective. The 85s will be a nice secondary as long as they don't get stuck shooting aircraft 10 kilometers away. And the general speed of the machine is good. The fact it sits quite low in the water as well means it's more of a low silhouette compared to a lot of the destroyers out there, which is nice. And it's just shaping up to be a pretty good machine. It's going to be very standard. I'm looking forward to research it. It's going to be pretty cheap to research, and a nice little addition to a USSR lineup, which I feel like gets overlooked quite a lot, just because it doesn't have access to a ton of different vehicles. But that could easily change in time, especially with this class of destroyer, since there was a ton of them made, and a lot of them had very interesting variations. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank BRFC, Swollen Ostrich, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Conte Baraka, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Lafouche, Barine, and Samuel Schlick for supporting the channel.